My wife cheated with her boss, secretly transferred $250, $0 into his account, and now they're claiming joint property is mine, even though I never signed a deed, and she's gaslighting me to think I'm crazy. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. Honestly, if you told me a year ago that I'd catch my wife cheating on me with her boss and then find out she'd secretly transferred $250,000 into his account, I'd have laughed in your face. But life has a cruel way of throwing punches when you least expect it. I married when I was 30. She was beautiful, sharp, and seemed to have everything together, at least on the surface. We met at a mutual friend's party and it was immediate. She was the kind of woman who could light up a room, make people feel special, and I fell hard fast. We moved in together, bought a house, and for a while it felt like I'd hit the jackpot. But over the last year something changed. She became colder, more distant, always busy with work, with her phone glued to her hand. I didn't think much of it at first. I figured she was just stressed or maybe overworked. Then little things started to add up. Missing phone calls, late nights at the office, her sudden obsession with her boss, Mark. She'd come home late, smell like perfume I didn't recognize, and brush off my questions with a laugh or a shrug. Still, I trusted her, or at least I told myself I did. Until that day when I found the first clue that shattered everything. It was a Friday evening. I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. I was exhausted and I just wanted to relax. I went into our bedroom and noticed her laptop was still open on the desk. That was unusual because she usually shut it down before she left for work or when she went to bed. Curious, I leaned over and saw her email inbox. Nothing unusual there, but then I saw a folder named Work Projects that I don't remember her mentioning. Out of curiosity, I clicked on it. What I saw made my stomach drop. There were emails, encrypted files, and bank statements. I didn't understand most of it at first. But then I saw something that made my blood run cold. A transfer of $250, $0, yes, $250,000, sent to an account that I didn't recognize with her name attached. It was labeled loan repayment or something like that, but I knew better. She'd been acting weird lately, hiding her phone, lying about her whereabouts, and now I had proof that she was cheating, and she was laundering money for her boss. I didn't confront her that night. I just sat there staring at the screen, trying to process what I'd just seen. My mind was racing. How long had this been going on? Was the money for the affair? Was Mark involved in some kind of scam? I felt numb, betrayed on every level. I didn't sleep that night, just kept staring at the laptop, trying to figure out what to do next. The next day, I decided I needed answers. I waited until she was out running errands, then I did some digging. I traced the account number. Sure enough, it was linked to Mark's company. I found out he's been siphoning money and was right there in the middle of it. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. I realized now she'd been lying to me for months, pretending everything was fine while she was screwing her boss and helping him steal hundreds of thousands. When she got home, I confronted her. I was furious. I told her what I knew, showed her the evidence, and her face turned white. Her first reaction: denial. She told me I was crazy, that I'd misunderstood, that the money was a loan she was working on for her boss, that it was all innocent. She called me paranoid, accused me of spying on her, and told me I was overreacting. But I was. I had the proof right in front of me. How could she lie so easily? How could she betray me like this? I felt my world crumbling. The anger was overwhelming, but beneath it all there was this deep, crushing sadness. I loved, I trusted her. I thought we had a good life. And now I was staring at the woman I thought I knew, realizing she'd been cheating, lying, and stealing from me, probably for months. I didn't know what to do at first. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and crushed. Then the rage started to boil over. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what yet. All I knew was my life was never going to be the same after this. After that confrontation, everything changed. Kept insisting she was innocent, that I was overreacting, that the money was just a loan for her boss. Big project. She looked me straight in the eye and lied with this bitchy smirk, telling me I was just paranoid, that I was making trouble for no reason. She even said I was crazy for doubting her, that I was insecure or jealous because she was successful. I wanted to believe her at first, to think maybe I was wrong, maybe I'd misunderstood. But deep down, I knew better. The evidence I found was too clear, too damning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head, her lies, her sneaky glances, the way she'd been acting distant and secretive. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My trust was shattered, and I was filled with this sick mix of anger and heartbreak. How could she lie to my face? How could she betray me like this? After all we'd been through, I started to question everything. Did she ever love me? Was I just some guy she married because it was convenient? The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was knowing she'd been so good at hiding it all for so long. In the days that followed, I began to dig even deeper. I hired a private investigator just to get some clarity. I needed to know if she was seeing Mark outside of work, if there were other men involved, or if she'd been lying about her whereabouts all along. The pie confirmed what I suspected. She'd been sneaking around with Mark, meeting him late at night, sometimes staying over at his place. The worst part, they'd been doing it for months. And the money transfer, it wasn't just a loan, it was part of a bigger scheme. Mark was laundering money and was right in the middle of it. I felt like I was living in some bad movie. I'd trusted her with everything, my life, my money, my heart, and she'd been cheating and stealing behind my back. It was a gut punch every time I thought about the times she'd told me she was working late or at a business dinner. Meanwhile, she was screwing her boss and helping him scam people out of hundreds of thousands. The thought made me sick. I started to see her true colors, the bitchy attitude, the gaslighting, the way she'd manipulate every situation to her advantage. She was a master at lying, and I'd been so blind. One day, I decided I'd had enough. I sat her down and told her I knew everything, the affair, the money, the lies. Her response: she threw a fit, called me crazy again, yelled that I was ruining her reputation, that I was just jealous because she was successful. She told me I was overreacting, that I should just forget about it and move on. That's when I realized she was good at spinning things around, making me doubt myself. She was gaslighting me, making me think I was losing my mind. But I was. I knew what I saw, what I uncovered. I knew she'd betrayed me on every level. The more she lied, the more I saw her true face, bitchy, manipulative, and completely selfish. I started to question everything about our marriage. Was she ever faithful? Did she even love me? Or was I just a convenient paycheck for her? The thought of losing everything I'd worked for, my house, my savings, my future, because of her greed and lies made me feel sick. I remember sitting in our living room, staring at the wall, feeling like I was losing my mind. I'd never been this angry, this hurt. I felt betrayed, but mostly I felt stupid for trusting her in the first place. How could I have missed all the signs? How did I not see she was a different person underneath that pretty face? I was so blinded by love, or maybe by hope, that she'd change. But now I knew better. She wasn't going to change. She was who she was, a lying, cheating, money-hungry bitch. And I was just another fool she'd used and discarded. I decided I needed to take control. I didn't want her to get away with this. I started to plan my next steps. I knew I had to protect myself and what was left of my life. I was going to confront her again, but this time with a plan. I'd call a lawyer, check my rights, and figure out how much of this mess I could salvage. I also wanted to see what I could do about the money, if I had any legal claim, or if she'd already completely drained the accounts. The betrayal was so deep that I felt like I was walking on thin ice, unsure of what was coming next, but I knew I couldn't let her keep lying and gaslighting me. This was just the beginning. I didn't know how it was going to end, but I was determined to get answers, to hold her accountable, and to protect myself from her bitchy manipulations. I wasn't going to let her ruin my life without a fight. After I gathered my thoughts and the evidence, I knew I had to be strategic. Confronting again without a plan would only give her the chance to spin more lies or gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. I spent the next couple of days doing research, talking to a lawyer, digging into the bank accounts, and figuring out exactly what rights I had. The more I learned, the angrier I got. She transferred that huge sum of money without my knowledge or consent, and now she was trying to pretend none of it mattered. I decided I'd have to take legal action. I couldn't just walk away from this mess, especially knowing she was claiming joint property I never signed for. She kept insisting that we were partners, that everything was ours, even though I'd never signed a deed or agreed to any of her shady financial moves. She was such a bitch about it, gaslighting me, telling me I was overreacting, and that I was just trying to ruin her reputation. But I knew better. I had the proof and I was prepared to fight for what was mine. One afternoon I sat her down again. This time I was calm but firm. I told her I knew she'd been lying, cheating, and stealing from me. I showed her the bank statements, the emails, everything I'd uncovered. I told her I was going to see a lawyer, that I was filing for divorce, and that I was going to get to the bottom of the money. Her reaction, she snapped. Started crying, calling me crazy, saying I was jealous and insecure, that I didn't understand her work, that Mark was just helping her with some big project. She even accused me of being paranoid because I didn't want her to succeed. That's when I realized her lies weren't just about the affair. They extended into her entire personality. She was manipulative, good at making herself out to be the victim, even when she was the one screwing everything up. I could see her bitchy attitude come out more clearly now, how she looked down on me for questioning her, how she spun stories to make herself look innocent. She kept insisting she loved me, that she'd never cheat, but her words felt hollow. Her actions told a different story. I felt a mix of frustration and sadness. I'd loved this woman, trusted her, built a life with her, and now I was staring at her lies and betrayal. It was like waking up from a nightmare. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. How did I miss all the signs? How did I not see this coming? I kept asking myself that over and over, feeling both stupid and furious. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything. Her bitchy smirk when she lied, the way she'd gaslight me into thinking I was crazy, the money she'd stolen. I started to realize that this wasn't just about infidelity or money. It was about her complete disregard for me, for our marriage, for honesty. I'd given her everything and she'd repaid me with lies, betrayal, and greed. It was a bitter pill to swallow. I knew I had to make a decision soon. I couldn't keep living like this, constantly questioning whether she was telling the truth or lying through her teeth. I'd already lost so much trust, and I didn't see how we could fix this. Her bitchy attitude, her manipulative lies, her greed, it all pointed to one thing: she was only out for herself. And I was done being the fool who let her get away with it. The next step was obvious. I'd contact a lawyer, start the divorce process, and make sure I protected what was left of my assets. I also had to figure out how to get that money back, if that was even possible. I knew she'd try to gaslight me into thinking I was crazy again, but I was prepared this time. I had the evidence. I had the law on my side, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this. Honestly, I felt a strange sense of relief, like I was finally taking back control. But underneath it all, there was still this gnawing hurt. How could she be so selfish, so bitchy, so manipulative? I'd loved her once, but I realized now that she was nothing like the woman I thought I knew. She was a liar, a thief, and a user. And as much as it hurt, I knew I had to walk away, even if that meant starting over from scratch. I owed it to myself to get out of this mess and rebuild my life without her bitchy, manipulative shadow hanging over me. The day I finally decided to move forward was one of the hardest days I've ever faced. I sat down with my lawyer and laid out everything: the evidence I'd gathered, the bank statements, her emails, the Pi's reports. I told him I wanted to file for divorce and also wanted to explore every legal avenue to recover that stolen money. It was clear wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a thief, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. My lawyer was straightforward. He explained that since I never signed any deed or legal document giving her joint ownership of the assets, her claims about joint property were basically invalid. She was trying to gaslight me into thinking I had no rights. He also said I had a strong case to freeze her accounts and possibly recover the stolen money through legal channels. The whole process was draining, but I felt a strange sense of clarity. I was finally taking control of the situation. I knew wasn't going to go down without a fight. Her bitchy attitude was on full display when I told her I was filing for divorce. She threw a tantrum, calling me crazy, accusing me of ruining her reputation, and insisting she'd done nothing wrong. She told me I was just jealous of her success and that I didn't understand her work. She even had the audacity to say I was trying to destroy her life. That bitchy smirk on her face made my blood boil. I wanted to shake her. How could she be so manipulative, so selfish? I made it clear I wanted her out of the house immediately. I wasn't going to let her stay and continue gaslighting me or stealing from me. I wanted her gone and I wanted the truth. I also ordered her to hand over her phone and all her financial documents. She tried to pretend she was innocent, but I could see the bitchy glare behind her eyes. She knew she was caught and she didn't like it. Over the next few days, things escalated. Started to get more aggressive, demanding I drop the divorce, claiming she'd chain or fix everything. But I knew better. I'd seen her true face now, bitchy, manipulative, and completely self-centered. I refused to be played anymore. I told her I'd be taking legal action to protect myself and that she should prepare for the consequences. Meanwhile, I kept digging into her finances. I discovered she'd transferred even more money, hidden accounts, and was trying to set up a new life without me knowing. I found out she'd been contacting her boss, Mark, behind my back, planning to run away with the money. My stomach twisted. I'd trusted her with everything, and she'd been planning her escape while I was clueless. It was like she was trying to erase me from her life. Like I was just some obstacle she was willing to toss aside for her own greed and pleasure. The emotional toll was brutal. I oscillated between anger, sadness, and disbelief. How could she be so bitchy and selfish? How could she betray me like this? I kept replaying all our good times, questioning if I'd missed the signs. And then I'd get furious all over again. I'd loved her once. I really did. But now I felt nothing but contempt for her manipulative, greedy ass. One night I sat alone in my living room, staring at the wall, feeling completely drained. I realized I'd been a fool to trust her, to believe she was the woman I thought I knew. She was a liar, a thief, and a user. I was furious at myself for not seeing it sooner, for not protecting myself better. But I also knew I had to move on, that I couldn't let her drag me down into her bitchy, manipulative world anymore. The next step was clear. I was going to finalize everything legally. I got in touch with a divorce attorney, started the paperwork, and prepared to fight her for every penny she'd stolen. I also started to plan how I'd rebuild my life, without her lies, and without her manipulative bitch attitude. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was done being her pawn. I deserved better. I deserved honesty and respect, and I was going to get it, even if I had to fight for every inch of my life back. The divorce process was all I wasn't prepared for. This bitchy attitude only intensified as she realized I was serious about cutting her out of my life. She threw every tantrum in the book, screaming, crying, accusing me of trying to ruin her career, her reputation, her future. She called me paranoid, insecure, and even tried to gaslight me into thinking I was the one at fault. But I wasn't having it anymore. I kept my lawyer close, made sure every step was documented, and refused to let her manipulate me into backing down. The more she fought, the more I saw her true colors. Her bitchy, entitled attitude shone through every time she yelled at me, calling me crazy or jealous. She insisted she was innocent, that this was all just a misunderstanding, except I had the proof. The emails, the bank statements, the pies reports. She kept spinning stories, trying to make me doubt my own sanity. But I knew what I'd seen, and I wasn't going to let her gaslight me anymore. During one of her bitchy tantrums, she even tried to turn the tables. She accused me of being controlling, insecure, and said I was just jealous of her success. She told me I was holding her back, that I didn't understand her ambitions. That was the moment I realized she'd been lying to herself as much as she lied to me. She thought she could manipulate her way out of this, that her charm and bitchy attitude could keep her afloat. But I saw through every bit of it now. Her bitchiness was just a mask for her greed and selfishness. I also discovered she'd been secretly transferring even more money, hidden accounts, offshore accounts, everything. She was trying to cover her tracks, but I was one step ahead. I hired a forensic accountant to trace all her financial moves, and it confirmed she'd been laundering money for months. The $250, $0 was just the tip of the iceberg. She'd been planning her escape, her new life, while pretending everything was fine. One day, I finally served her divorce papers. Her reaction: classic bitchy meltdown. She yelled, cursed, and accused me of ruining her life. She told me I was a terrible husband, that I didn't support her ambitions, that I was insecure. But I just looked her in the eye and said, "You lied, you cheated, and you stole from me. I'm done." That shut her up for a moment. She realized I wasn't backing down, that I had all the evidence, and that I was serious about ending this nightmare. As the legal proceedings moved forward, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I was finally taking control, but I also knew I'd never fully trust her again. Her bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations, they'd left scars I wasn't sure would ever heal. I started to think about rebuilding my life, about how to move past her greed and betrayal. I found a new apartment, started sorting through my finances, and reached out to friends for support. I couldn't believe how quickly everything had fallen apart, how I'd gone from the happiest guy to a man betrayed on every level. The hardest part was accepting that the woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone so selfish, so manipulative, so bitchy. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to her true nature. But I also knew I couldn't change the past. All I could do now was focus on the future. I was determined to rebuild, to protect what was mine, and to never let anyone manipulate or betray me like that again. Now I'm in the thick of it, going through the divorce, fighting for my assets, and trying to piece my life back together. It's not easy. Some days I feel broken, some days I'm furious, but most days I just remind myself that I deserve better, that I deserve honesty, respect, and someone who won't treat me like an ATM or a punching bag for their bitchy attitude. I've learned a lot from this nightmare, mainly that trust is fragile, and that some people will do anything for greed and power. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought, and I won't let her win. Not this time. The final stages of the divorce were just as messy as I expected, but I felt a strange sense of relief finally taking control of my life. This bitchy, manipulative attitude didn't stop trying to throw obstacles in my way. She hired her own lawyer, tried to claim she deserved half of everything, and insisted she was the real victim. But I had the evidence, the legal backing, and a clear plan. I knew she was trying to gaslight me into thinking I was the bad guy, but I refused to play that game anymore. The court proceedings were a blur of paperwork, accusations, and emotional exhaustion. Kept spinning stories, trying to paint herself as the wronged wife, but her bitchy attitude was too obvious. She'd lie, deny, then turn around and scream at me in court, trying to manipulate the judge. I stayed calm, focused, and made sure every piece of evidence was presented clearly. The judge saw through her bullshit. She was a liar, a thief, and a manipulative bitch. It took months, but in the end I got everything I was entitled to: my house, my savings, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd fought for what was right. The money she stole, her secret transfers, offshore accounts, and laundering were finally being tracked down. My lawyer worked tirelessly to freeze her assets and recover what she'd taken. It wasn't all of it back, but enough to make her realize she couldn't keep running from her actions. Watching her try to weasel her way out of it was almost pathetic. Her bitchy attitude turned to desperation, but I didn't care anymore. I'd already moved on emotionally. Her manipulations no longer had power over me. After everything was settled, I felt a strange mixture of emptiness and liberation. I had lost the woman I loved, yes, but I gained clarity. I learned that trust is fragile, that some people are capable of incredible betrayal, and that you have to be willing to fight for yourself. I also realized how much emotional baggage I'd been carrying: anger, hurt, betrayal, and how important it was to let go of that pain, to forgive myself for trusting her blindly, and to focus on rebuilding. Today, I'm in a much better place. I've started therapy, focused on my career, and rebuilt my social life. I don't regret what happened. If anything, it taught me to be more cautious, more aware, and more resilient. I still get angry sometimes when I think about her bitchy, manipulative ways. But I remind myself that I'm better off without her. I deserve someone honest, someone who respects me, not someone who betrays me for greed or ambition. Looking back, I realize I wasted too much time trying to hold on to a person who was never truly there for me. but I'm grateful I found out the truth before it was too late. I learned a hard lesson about trust, about money, and about the kind of person I want to be with, someone who's honest, loyal, and respectful. Betrayal hurts like hell, but it also teaches you what you're really worth. I'll never forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. I'm moving forward, stronger and wiser than ever. And honestly, that's the best revenge of all.